rise, we unite, from the mountains to the sea. Warriors of love, you and me. We are the new tribe of the earth, connecting our spirits, remembering our worth. First Nation standing hand in hand.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rainbow Warriors 101. My name is Michelle, and I am honored to be here and sitting with all of you and learning this evening. As the children of Mother Earth, we are humbly walking hand in hand, forging the way for all generations to come. Tonight, we are joined by Harley Smith. And Harley, I just want to say I'm so looking forward to hearing what you have to share. I heard wonderful things about you when you were here last time, so I'm super excited. Thank you for being here. There is absolutely zero tolerance for any disrespect here at Rainbow Warriors 101. We are safe for all First Nations people globally to come, meaning all cultures, all races, and all colors. Children, absolutely love the children, and they are more than welcome to join us. However, we do ask that they are with an adult. There will be time after our speaker is done for questions. If you have any questions that have come afterwards, please email us at rainbowwarriors.101.united@gmail.com. And with that, I am going to pass the feather over to Chief Mel Standing Eagle. Chief.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Good evening and welcome everyone once again. Rainbow Warriors 101, where together we all grow. I always open with some prayer. With that, I have some tobacco that I'm putting down, giving thanks to Creator for this day. I ask tonight that we be given sight like the eagle, that we can see, hear Harley's words, feel, understand, interpret the knowledge, be able to see its uses, and that as the wolf, that as we do this, we do no harm to earth, but work to clean and to be passive on our paths. And for all of us here together, like the bear, may we all work together as one family, one tribe. We are the new tribe of the earth, the Rainbow Warriors. And let us always keep our focus on those things spiritual, Creator, giving us this day, that of the buffalo reminding us of that sacredness. And with that, Creator, we appreciate, we thank you, we give gratitude. Brother Harley, brother, you have been the voice of conversation here long after you were gone. Lance had to keep talking about you because those little seeds that you planted last time, they grew. More questions and more people seeking more understanding. And this is all about us growing together, being healthier. We can be no healthier than the food that we eat. We can be no healthier than our plants, our gardens, our farms. So with that being said, Brother Harley, I know you got some tidbits, some little useful bites that's going to help make this garden even more exciting and better, because I'm just amazed at what I've been getting out of my small garden this year. And I've been giving away tomatoes. I mean, God, a few bags of tomatoes I've given away. And when it's getting the proper nurture and nourishment, it's amazing what a plant would do. Brother Harley, it's yours.
Thank you for inviting me back. When I was here last time, I was looking more and talking more about the soil biology, about enzymes in the environment, about plant growth promoting rhizobacteria and the mycorrhizal fungi, the biology that works synergistically with the plant to aid with the uptake of water and minerals. And that's exciting because the more efficiently plants take up water and minerals, the more chemical reactions they can do, the higher the Brix. And Brix is a measurement of the sugar content in the sap. If you can grow such healthy plants that the Brix is at 12% or higher, the organic gardeners tell me that sucking insects won't even recognize the plant as food. They're that strong. That stored energy that the plant has, it can release it into abundant yields, or it can save it and use it to fight off pests and disease if the plant's under attack. So the uptake of nutrients is very important, obviously. But today, we're not going to talk so much about the microbes and the biology. We're going to talk more about the minerals from the earth. Because if the minerals aren't there, all the essential elements in the right form, plant available form, and in the right balance, then you could have a great biology, but the plant still won't reach its genetic potential. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about essential elements for plants in a strategy of growing that I call spoon feeding, where you're giving the plant exactly what it needs when it needs it. And this is even, we're talking about fine tuning here. We can have a great base, we can have very fertile soil, but sometimes things get out of balance as the plants are growing. So with spoon feeding, we can steer the crop. We can make it a little bit more vegetative. We can make it a little more generative at the right time, put a little bit more energy into fruit or flower production. We can prevent or solve nutrient deficiencies. I heard before we even started tonight, right now the plants are growing strong, middle of the summer, but sometimes there's a hidden hunger. The plant can't take up enough nutrients to meet its needs, and you might see some yellow leaves. And when we get to the end of the program tonight, I'll show you a few ways that you can diagnose your plants, and I'll show you some more specific ways you can do it with lab analysis. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see here. Okay, hold on. Don't want to do that. Here we go. Plants need 17 essential elements. There are over 90 elements on the earth, but only 17 of those elements are essential. And that means that if the plant's missing even one of those essential elements, the plant won't be able to complete its life cycle. So that's why they're essential. Now, there's some other elements that are beneficial. There's some others that may be beneficial, but we don't know enough about nature yet to be able to harness that power. But we do know about 17. Now, when I started over 30 years ago in the hydroponics industry, there were only 16 essential elements. But they're adding essential elements over time as we're able to do more and more controlled experiments. So we're going to talk about those 17 elements tonight and how we can use them in spoon feeding our crops. Now, 3 of the essential elements, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, those are free. They come from carbon dioxide in the air and water. Plants take in carbon dioxide through the leaves. They take up water through the roots. Then, in the presence of full spectrum light, the red and the blue end of the spectrum, they do photosynthesis. They harness the energy of light. That's where all the energy comes from the plants, and on from the plants and then on to the animals. That's our energy source, the sun. Now, plants need the blue end of the spectrum, and they need the red end of the spectrum, especially for photosynthesis. Now, talk a little bit about light here. During the vegetative growth stage, plants prefer the blue end of the spectrum. Have you ever heard, you guys would know what phototropism is? Where a plant leans toward the light. You can put a plant on the windowsill, it leans toward the light. You can turn it around. The next day, wow, it's leaning toward the light again. Well, actually, the plant isn't leaning toward the light. It's only leaning toward a narrow spectrum of sunlight, the blue spectrum at around the 460 nanometer wavelength. Why is that? Well, plants have evolved to compete for the light. If a plant's in the shade, it wants to stretch to get above the plants in the canopy or lean toward a break in the canopy. But once the plant sees the sky, in other words, gets enough of that 460 nanometer wavelength, sky blue, it stops stretching. And then the plant turns into a photosynthesis machine. So if we have later on, if you want to invite me back in the fall, we'll talk a little bit about indoor growing and how to use horticultural lighting to grow plants and vegetables, gourmet quality all winter long. But for now, nature's been doing this without our help for a long, long time. So if the plant sees the sky, it's going to have plenty of blue light. It's going to stop stretching. So if you're starting seedlings indoors in the spring, you want to transplant them outdoors, you want to make sure you have some lights, some even just fluorescent lights, nothing special, cool white with plenty of blue. Keep them close to the plant. Because of the blue spectrum, the plants will be short and stocky. They'll have thicker stems. They'll have more dark green foliage because blue is responsible for chlorophyll production more than any other color in the spectrum. If you look at the leaves under a microscope, you'll see that the stomata, the pores that take up CO2, there's more of them and closer together if you looked at it under a microscope. And the cuticle cells, the waxy covering on leaves, will be thicker. So it turns the plant into a photosynthesis machine. Now, every day in the morning, the plants wake up and they see the sky. And when they see the sky, it signals the plant to open the stomata, the pores, wide open, to take up carbon dioxide and start to make the sugars for the day. Now, also plants use the red end. Won't talk too much about that. But as the fall, the seasons progress, the sun, the day length gets shorter and shorter. There's proportionally more reds and far reds. The plant measures its life from dusk to dusk. So it knows it's getting older. It knows it's time to make flowers, to store its energy in the fruit and in the flowers for the next season. It's part of the cycle of nature. But sunlight has all those spectrums already without our help. But if you invite me back next fall, I'll show you how to grow an indoor garden, use some hydroponics indoors with lights, and in a little 3-foot by 3-foot area, literally 3-foot by 3-foot, with one light, with one 400-watt light, you could grow enough herbs, enough basil for a French restaurant. Yeah, in that small area, indoors. With a little bit stronger light, with a 600-watt light, with a little bit more red in the spectrum, you could probably harvest 2,000 cherry tomatoes over the winter, picking them ripe off the vine. So, small amount of space with the right spectrum of light and right intensity, you can harness the power of nature and all winter long. So I start my indoor gardens in the fall after the harvest, and I can be picking ripe tomatoes, taste like they came out of the garden in August, all winter long. That's enough of that. Let's move on. You have to get into the elements. So we talked about 3: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Carbon dioxide and water for photosynthesis. They take in the carbon dioxide, take up the water. With the light, they make sugars. They use that for energy. Some of those sugars they use for energy to grow and reproduce. Some of the sugars they store in the flowers, in the fruit, in the seeds for the next generation. Some of the sugars they store in the roots as starches. And the plant will use that stored sugar, that stored energy, to unlock that energy to take in some minerals like phosphorus and potassium when they need it. And some of those sugars, they actually leak from the roots to feed the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria and the mycorrhizal fungi, like we talked about last time. And in exchange for those sugars, the microorganisms make organic acids and enzymes that do mineralization. They unlock some of those minerals from soil particles. They unlock some from organic matter and feed it to the plant. So there's a cycle going on there. But it's the minerals. Plants are autotrophic. Autotrophic. That means they're self-feeders. They don't need the microorganisms to feed them. The microorganisms help them reach their genetic potential. But if you give the plant light, full spectrum light, carbon dioxide, water, and the 14 minerals that the plant needs, the plant will make everything it needs to grow and reproduce. It's amazing. It's a miracle of nature, and it's part of the cycle of life for all of us. So the minerals themselves are important, essential elements, even without the biology. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that now. So these are some of the minerals of those 14 minerals besides carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that the plants need. On the left hand of the screen here, I have the macro elements. Those are the ones the plant needs in the highest amounts. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. We know all about that. Calcium, magnesium, sulfur. They use a lot of those in the right balance. On the right side of the screen here, we have the trace elements, the transition metals, iron, copper, manganese, and zinc. They activate enzymes in the plant. They harness the electron transport chain in photosynthesis and cellular metabolism. They're used in small amounts, but they're just as essential as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We also have boron that works along with calcium and helps transport the sugars, and molybdenum down at the bottom there. Molybdenum, you can see only a fraction of a part per million, 0.01 parts per million to 0.05. That's all they need. But it's just as essential as nitrogen. In fact, without molybdenum, the plant can't assimilate nitrogen and make it into enzymes inside the plant and into chlorophyll. So molybdenum is just as essential as nitrogen. Let me give you a little example. There's some portions of Australia where the molybdenum levels in the soil are low, just naturally low. They're kind of old soils. Australia, those parts of Australia used to have to import wheat. They couldn't produce enough wheat to feed their own population. But once scientists discovered the key of that tiny amount of the trace element molybdenum, they added that to the soil, just a little bit of molybdenum. And they went from being a wheat importing nation to becoming a wheat exporting nation. Okay, so these are the minerals that doesn't matter if it's organic fertilizer, doesn't matter if it's hydroponic fertilizer, they need all those minerals in these basic ranges. Now they have to be, for the plant to use them, they have to be in water-soluble form, have to be dissolved in the water, the soil water, and they have to be in what they're called the ionic form. Ions are small, electrically charged. It's electricity, the flow of energy, electrically charged particles. And that's the form the plants take up. So if you're using all organic fertilizers, plants can't take up large organic molecules. That's where the microbes come in. The microbes make the digestive enzymes that break the large molecules into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller molecules until they're so small these minerals are in their ionic form. And that's the form that plant takes them up. So in hydroponics, we do it a little differently. Same minerals, but we mine the minerals from Mother Earth, process them into a water-soluble form, put them together in the perfect balance, and bypass the microbes so the plants can take them up immediately. It's sort of like creating the perfect soil, but we can be so precise that it's like creating the perfect soil for each stage of the plant's growth. So that's one of the benefits of hydroponics. Also, we can recycle those nutrients. And I don't want to get too far off track here, but My wife, Sue, I'm not my ex-wife, my late wife, she had a hydroponics greenhouse teaching kids. She had zero runoff greenhouse. It was hydroponics. Uh, she was capturing rainwater from the roof of the greenhouse, fresh water, to replace the water that the plants were transpiring. She mixed up the nutrient formulas with recipes, with all of every single essential element. The kids were doing this, high school kids, to the precise amounts, target amounts, and they'd circle them through the plants. They captured all the wastewater. Instead of it going down the drain, cleaned it, and then once they had that captured wastewater, once every couple of weeks or so, take a sample of the water, send it to the lab. They would get a readout of all the minerals that were left in the water that the plant didn't take up. They entered that into a spreadsheet. The computer would tell them how much of each individual mineral salt to put back in to replace what the plant took out. Nothing goes down the drain. Environmentally friendly, zero runoff. So I'm not saying that, there's a place for hydroponics. You definitely want full, on your fertile soil with your organic matter, with your enthusiastic community of microorganisms. But sometimes you can add just one or two of these limiting minerals in their ionic form, spoon feed, and help the plant, rescue the plant from a deficiency or from a hidden hunger. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at these. I don't want to run out of time too fast, start telling too many stories. Okay, let's look at some of the ones that the plants use a lot of. Nitrogen. Nitrogen is the growth element. In the first half of the plant's growth, it will assimilate 80% of the nitrogen it needs for the whole life of the plant. So in hydroponics, or even out in the gardens, you want to have plenty of available nitrogen early in the season so the plants can grow the stems and leaves, vegetative growth stage. Now the problem is, it's gardeners in hydroponics or in regular gardening, is we tend to over fertilize, use too much. Everybody's done it. They think, well, if a little bit of a spoonful full is good, then 2 spoonfuls must be twice as good. Not so. Nitrogen is a luxury element. If you give the plant too much nitrate, more than it needs, the plant will assimilate it, whether it needs it or not. You give it more nitrate, it'll assimilate that too. You give it more, it'll stimulate the plant to assimilate that too. And it can build up to, what you'll do is you'll burn up all the energy of growth into top growth, but it will restrict the root growth later on. So later on, when you're getting into the summer, you need more of the phosphorus and potassium. You don't have enough stored sugars. So don't overdo it with nitrogen. And they see it. Add the nitrogen. Look how green my plants are. Look how fast they're growing. Isn't that great? Not necessarily. Also, with too much nitrogen, you get big cells with thin cell walls. It makes the plant more susceptible to pests and diseases. It makes it an easy target for sucking insects. It makes it an easy target for fungal infections. So you want to just give it adequate nitrogen. In fact, personally, even in hydroponics, I like to be on the low side of sufficiency, because that way the plant's able to use some of its extra energy instead of for growth, can store it up for later. Okay, there's 2 forms of nitrogen the plants take up, nitrate and ammonium. In hydroponics, we give about 90% as nitrate, no more than 10% as ammonium. But in the soil, if you have the microbes, you can give it more of the ammonium too, because there's microorganisms in the soil. There's some of them that can convert ammonium into nitrite. Other microbes convert nitrite into nitrate, and the plant takes up the nitrate. So you have to have microorganisms. Otherwise, the ammonium in nature can become toxic to the plant. Also, another form of nitrogen that we'll talk about here, amino acids. Some microorganisms make an enzyme called protease that breaks down proteins into amino acids. And then other microorganisms eat the nitrogen from the amino acid, convert it into ammonia, and ammonia to nitrate, nitrate to nitrate. The plant takes it up, but it's a slow release. Plus, the amino acids are chelators for calcium. So it helps keep the calcium from getting locked up. It makes it more available. In fact, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But those amino acids stimulate root cells to open calcium ion channels so the plant will take up more calcium. Strengthens the stems and leaves, vascular system. The plant's able to take up and distribute all of the essential elements more efficiently. So amino acids are a good form of nitrogen to feed the microorganisms in the soil. Also, some of the other ones that you typically use in the fall for the next year, you can use the fish hydrolysates or the fish emulsions. There's blood meal. There's other sorts of nitrogen, but that's more for the soil. It's not for the plant. The nitrate for the nitrogen for the plant is going to be either nitrate or ammonium. Okay, let me move on here. Phosphorus. Phosphorus is the energy element. It's part of the energy currency of the plant called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, ATP. ATP is produced by the plant, the energy currency, during photosynthesis and during cellular metabolism. It's temporarily stored, the energy is stored in the phosphate bonds. And then when the phosphate bonds are cleaved later on, it releases the energy to do the chemistry of life. So phosphorus is the energy element, very important from the beginning to the end. But there's a couple places where spoon feeding comes in. One is early rooting. Phosphorus stimulates better root strike and better establishment of the plant. So use a small amount, a very small amount of extra phosphorus early on, you'll get more roots. I do this in some of my experiments. I added, we're talking spoon feeding, a 1/16 of a teaspoon, a 1/16 of a teaspoon per gallon of monoammonium phosphate. The ammonium aids with the uptake of phosphorus. The phosphorus is used right then, taken up immediately, and it stimulated rooting. When I added that small amount in my experiment, I had 20% more roots at transplant. So that's a good place to use it. Another place to spoon feed a little bit of phosphorus is early flowering. Phosphorus stimulates earlier flowering and more flowering sites, which again turns into more fruit and downstream. So there's two places where you can just add a very small amount of soluble, the ionic form, the phosphate form that the plants take up, inorganic phosphorus, which is the form plants always take up even from organic fertilizer. It just takes them a long time. If you use bone meal, it could take 3 seasons before that phosphorus is released. So, but if you just need it a little bit more right now, that's how you do it, earlier flowering. Okay, next is potassium. Potassium is the health element. It contributes to the quality of fruit and flowers more than any of the other essential elements. So the place to do some spoon feeding is during heavy fruit and flower production. During heavy fruit and flower production, plants can deplete potassium to deficient levels in just 2 or 3 days, because the plant's taking up that potassium is important for carbohydrate metabolism of the plant. So the soil water with the potassium in it is coming to the roots, and the plant sucks it up, takes up the potassium. But if it's growing heavy fruit and flower production, it can't get enough potassium to replace what it took up. It's too slow. So the plants can develop what's called a hidden hunger. So you can get so sometimes you've probably seen it in your own gardens. Plants are growing great. they're putting on they're putting on fruit and flowers, they're growing like crazy, then all of a sudden nothing. The plants just stalled out. Why are they stalling out? It could be potentially a potassium deficiency. Had just a little bit of potassium. Maybe you can do organic potassium phosphate. It's a mineral, but it's considered organic, certified organic. Add a little bit, it sparks the carbohydrate metabolism. The plants start to grow again and recover. Other place to add it is with if you're using the bloom stimulants. Some of that we talked about before. By the way, that's my late wife here, Sue. She died a year ago. This was when one of our trips. We went to the Netherlands to see how they were doing it, growing plants in the Netherlands, fruits and flowers. And we took a little side trip to Belgium where they were doing some of the very first trials, scientific trials, with organic bloom stimulants. So they were doing hydroponics, so all the essential elements were there. On the left here, that was just the hydroponics with just the minerals. On the right, it was the same minerals, the hydroponics, but they added the biostimulant. They used it as a foliar spray and at the roots. Now, the scientists told us when we came in that the plants on the left, those pepper plants, those are sweet peppers, 12 feet tall. Literally 12 feet tall, loaded with peppers. And the scientists said, if you could even get a 2% increase in yield under these conditions, it would be statistically relevant. With the biostimulants on the right side of the screen, halfway through the trial, when we were there, it was already at 10% and rising. More, not just more fruit, but bigger, stronger, heavier fruit with more shelf life. They found out 2 weeks more shelf life because the plants were taking up nutrients so much better. Well, anyway, they were also doing experiments. They were checking the nutrient. Remember I talked about they take this sample of the nutrients, they see what the plant took up, what it left behind. Well, as the plant was putting on more weight with fruit and flowers, potassium was being drawn down faster than any other element. Why? Because the plants needed that potassium to make the big, heavy fruit and flowers. So if you're using a biostimulant product, some of them that we talked about, or maybe Lance has been talking about, if you're using a bloom stimulant, my recommendation is add some potassium with it so the plant can reach its potential. And I actually suggested that to the scientists. I said, well, if potassium is being drawn down faster than any other element, won't potassium eventually be the limiting factor? Why don't you just add more potassium? They said, we can't do that. I said, well, why not? I mean, this is a research greenhouse. They said, because in a controlled experiment, you can only have one variable. If we added the organic biostimulant, and they added potassium, they could look at the results at the end of the experiment and say, oh, the reason you got more yield was because of the potassium. It wasn't because of the biostimulant. So they didn't do it. But I can tell you, if you're pushing your plants, if you're getting maximum yields, putting on a lot of weight with fruit, and your tomatoes, especially, add a little bit of potassium. It'll be good for your plants. Okay, we'll talk about some of this other stuff later. Yeah, that's okay. There's some other things with this. I talk about this on my biostimulant class too, but we'll move on. That's enough on potassium. So let's take a look at the spectrum a little bit here. Take a drink. The nutritional needs of the plant change during the life cycle of the plants. So, of course, in hydroponics, we use a grow formula during vegetative growth stage, and then we use a bloom formula during fruiting and flowering stage. The grow formula, guess what? Has proportionally more nitrogen. The bloom nutrients, guess what? Has proportionally more phosphorus and potassium. So we can literally change the balance as the plants grow, start reducing the amount of nitrogen when they don't need it as much anymore, and increasing the phosphorus and potassium. So let's take a look at all the essential elements real quick. Okay, we talked about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We want the right balance. Nitrogen during vegetative, phosphorus, potassium for fruit and flowers. Also calcium and magnesium. Now, calcium is a passive element. It's an immobile element too in the plant. It's only taken up in the soil water in the transpiration stream. So if your air is too humid, you have too high a humidity, the plant's not transpiring as much because the air is too wet, so it's less transpiration, you can get a calcium deficiency. Even if there's plenty of calcium in the soil, plenty of calcium in the root zone. So it's indoors, it's really important to control your relative humidity. Now on the other side, outdoors, we talked about, I gave you a little hint earlier on, I got a little ahead of myself, amino acids. Two of the amino acids, glutamic acid and glycine, natural amino acids, L-amino acids, made by microbes too. Those two amino acids literally stimulate root cells to open calcium ion channels. And when they open the calcium ion channel, thousands of calcium ions flow into the roots, are taken up in the transpiration stream. If the calcium ion channel is closed, then just one at a time of calcium ions are going up. So when we went to one of the greenhouses in the Netherlands, they were doing experiments with biostimulants with the amino acids, and they found out that the increased uptake of calcium was able to prevent powdery mildew, even under high humidity. Remember, I think I told you this last time I talked about it. In the Netherlands, mainly doing hydroponics, but in the Netherlands, they made all chemical fungicides illegal on food crops because all chemical fungicides have at least the potential for negative side effects for human beings. So they were losing a lot of their crop to powdery mildew and grain mold and other fungus because they stopped using fungicides. In the Netherlands, it's cool, it's overcast, it's the perfect conditions for powdery mildew. When they added the biostimulant, though, did the trial with the amino acids in it, they went from losing 40% of the crop before to losing zero. Yeah, with no fungicides. They got a 10% increase in yield over any past year, and they were first in the line for sugar content in the fruit for Brix, high Brix. So calcium forms the glue that glues the cell walls together. When the plant takes up the calcium, it strengthens the vascular system, the stems and the leaves. So the plant's able to take up and distribute water and all of the other essential elements more efficiently, get all the way through the plant. So that's why one of the main reasons why along with the potassium, but the calcium was improving the yield so much. So if you get more root growth, stimulate your root growth with biostimulants, you have more root mass, a sponge to take up water and minerals. If you have a strong vascular system, they take up and distribute the water and minerals. And remember, I said this right in the first slide, the more efficiently plants take up water and minerals, the more chemical reactions they do, the higher the Brix, the sugar content in the sap. And that means we're growing nutrient-dense food. Nutrient-dense food. And the calcium is key. It's part of that process, not all by itself, but along with the other essential elements, helps us improve the nutritional value of food and improve the plant's natural resistance to pests and disease. Okay, now magnesium. Magnesium is a mobile element. Calcium is immobile. If you have a mobile element like magnesium, if you get a magnesium deficiency, plants will pull magnesium out of the old growth, send it to the new growth where it's needed the most. So magnesium does a lot of things. First of all, magnesium is the central element in chlorophyll. That's for photosynthesis. So that's what makes plants green. Also, magnesium works along with phosphorus, especially when the energy needs are highest. Remember I said phosphorus is the energy element? It stores the energy in the phosphate bonds temporarily until they're cleaved to release the energy. Well, magnesium holds the ATP molecule in position so that those bonds can be cleaved. So when the energy needs of the plant are the highest, the magnesium needs of the plant are the highest. Usually when I see the most magnesium deficiency is the transition from grow to bloom. That's a good time. There's a lot of energy needs, a lot of hormonal changes in the plant, or during heavy production. You can start to see magnesium deficiency. But magnesium is easy to fix. Now, how do you know if it's a magnesium deficiency? Since it's a mobile element, it's going to show up in the old growth, the bottom leaves first. What will happen is the veins of the leaf will stay green, but the tissue between the veins will turn yellow. That's a typical sign of magnesium deficiency. Now, it's easy to fix. You can do it even organically with a mineral, certified organic mineral from the earth, magnesium sulfate, Epsom salts. You can add a little magnesium sulfate, just a touch, or use a foliar spray with magnesium sulfate. Plants will green up. It'll continue to transport magnesium to the new growth for the energy. Here's another thing, though. I've seen if you have too much potassium. So when people say I have a magnesium deficiency in hydroponics, first question I ask them, what stage of the growth is it? Well, if it's vegetative growth, so they're probably under fertilizing. If there's a deficiency, then you add a little bit more. If it's during fruiting and flowering stage, they may be adding too much potassium. A potassium toxicity, too much potassium, will show up as a magnesium deficiency. I'll say that again. Potassium toxicity shows up as a magnesium deficiency. So sometimes the solution isn't to add more of something, it's to add less. If you're using a PK boost, cut back on it. You don't need as much. If the plant has more than it needs, and it's building up to too high levels, the plant's out of balance. Those three cations, positively charged ions, remember, positive and negative ions, electricity. The positive ions, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Those are the primary positive ions, cations, and they balance themselves out in the plants. You add too much of one, you get less of the other. Same way, you had too much calcium early on, you could get a magnesium deficiency. You get it even more, too much, you can get a potassium deficiency. And I've done it. I mean, I'm laughing because in the lab, they never saw it before, but I was pushing calcium so much in my experiments that it was building up to extreme levels, and it was showing up as a potassium deficiency. What? So I ended up having to back off on my amino acids. Well, that's another story. So sometimes too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. So try to find the right balance, and you can know it by visual signs, and I'll show you about a tissue analysis in a few minutes. I'll identify things there. So okay, I guess that's enough on magnesium. Next is sulfur. Sulfur is overlooked a lot of times, but when I was doing my first experiments in hydroponics over 30 years ago, my very first experiment, I think, I created, with the help of a chemist, and I needed help back then because I was a beginner, but we created nutrient formulas that were missing one element only. So we had one that was zero nitrogen. Had all of the other elements, but not nitrogen. I had one that was zero phosphorus, one zero potassium, zero calcium, another one that was zero magnesium. We're growing them side by side. I wanted to create, in an experiment, create the nutrient deficiency so I could see what it looks like and get some clues about how they worked in the plant. So how we could spoon feed to make some improvements in crop health and yield. Well, sulfur was an interesting one. We did a zero sulfur. It had all the other elements, but no sulfate, no sulfate sulfur. I didn't see a huge difference at first. Yeah, the plants, they were about the same size, as the control. The leaves were smaller. They were less green. They obviously weren't vigorous. They didn't look good, but it wasn't a huge difference at first glance. But where we saw the difference was during flowering. The plants, I was doing basil as my control. The control that had the sulfur had about 14, 16-inch flowers loaded with petals. The one with zero sulfur, 2-inch flower, just a few little petals on it. So I knew 30 years ago that somehow, so I knew sulfur was responsible for some of the aromas, like in onions, but in garlic. But I learned that sulfur is also part of the flowering process. 2 years after I did that experiment, plant scientists discovered what's called a zinc finger transcription factor. What? What are you saying? Zinc finger transcription factor? What's that? Well, the zinc finger transcription factor is 4 cysteine molecules. That's an amino acid that contains sulfur with 1 zinc ion. It forms a factor that goes into the cell, goes into the nucleus, attaches to the DNA. The sulfhydryl bonds attach to the DNA inside the plant and turns on a series of genes that tells the plant, don't make more stems and leaves, make flowering parts, more blooms, bigger blooms. So some of the secrets of the bloom stimulants in nature are the combinations in nature's kitchen of amino acids and the trace elements, including sulfur. Okay, so that's enough on sulfur. It's taken up slowly. It tends in hydroponics, it's a problem element because it tends to build up in the reservoir. Plants take up the nitrates and the phosphates really quickly, the potassium quick, the magnesium takes up the sulfur more slowly, so it tends to build up in the reservoir. That's another story. But it can build up to pretty high levels and it won't hurt the plant. It just takes up space. Okay, well, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the next one. The next one isn't an essential element. It's a beneficial element, silicon. So it is one of those that I think someday, in the not too distant future, they'll discover that silicon actually is an essential element, but only under certain conditions. Okay, silicon is taken up in the form of silicic acid. It's made available by some microorganisms, silicon solubilizing microbes in the root zone. If the plant is under attack by fungus, it's under a fungal attack, plants will mobilize silica from the roots to the point of infection, will crystallize the cells around the infection point, and will help prevent the disease from spreading. Silicon also is beneficial. It's taken up in the water, in the cell water. It's transported through the aquaporins with the water, under high transpiration. But the silicon will also strengthen the cell walls. It works along with the calcium. Sort of think of calcium as the pectin, calcium pectate as the cement. Silicon embeds in the cement like rebar. So it's strengthening the cell walls and it makes the plant more resistant to pests and diseases. And also it helps strengthen the plants against some of the environmental stress. Most of the silicon, and it's not being taken up, is going to be in the roots. And then that's going to help with the permeability of the roots. So if there's some drought stress, it's going to help the plant take up the water that it needs. So it really helps with stress tolerance as well. Almost out of time, so I'm going to wrap this up. Trace elements, iron, copper, manganese, and zinc, activate enzymes, part of the electron transport chain. Boron helps with, works along with calcium, help transport the calcium, also helps transport sugars in the plant, very important. Also important for the flexibility of the cell walls as the fruit is growing. I went to one of the Dutch greenhouses and I saw a whole pallet of a boron product. I said, well, what's this boron for? They said, oh, under certain conditions, we will add spoon feed a little bit of extra boron. It helps prevent the tomatoes from splitting. So it helps with the strength and flexibility of the cell walls too. Chloride is part of photosynthesis. I never add that. It's never spoon feed chloride. There's plenty of chlorine, you know, in the from the oceans, and it's in the soil. It's in there with other elements. Molybdenum, I do add that in my hydroponics. Nickel, that was the one that they added later on. That helps in nitrogen metabolism, mainly with if you're using urea. I typically don't use it. I don't use urea in hydroponics, so I don't have to add more nickel. But nickel will activate an enzyme called urease that changes urea nitrogen into ammonium. And so the ammonium can change to nitrate, and takes it up. So it is essential, again, in very small amounts. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about that. If you're going to add trace elements, especially the transition metals, pH is important. pH of your soil, if your pH is too high, plants have a hard time taking up those elements, even if there's plenty of it there in the soil. So a lot of times the microorganisms make chelators, like for iron. The plants will too. The plants will exude organic acids like citric acid. It will complex with the iron, keep it from oxidizing, keep it available. The oxidized form of iron, like rust or the Fe3, the ferric form, plants can't take that up. They only can take up the ferrous part. So plants say, okay, we need the iron. Let's exude some citric acid, some other organic acids. Microorganisms will come to the rescue too. They'll make the organic acids. They'll make a siderophore. Siderophore is a chelator. Siderophore means iron carrier. It's one of the best chelators of iron in nature. So nature does have a solution, but the pH is the problem. Now, if you wanted to spoon feed iron, it's really easy. Take your fulvic acid, add a little kelp to it. You're going to add 62 beneficial trace elements, including iron. You spray that on the leaves as a foliar spray. The humic fulvic acid stimulates an enzyme that will increase the electrical potential across the membrane, positive and negative sides. Again, so there's more energy the plant can use to transport iron into the plant, and manganese, copper, and zinc. So yeah, there's some things we can do for spoon feeding that's very simple. Or you can go ahead and buy an amino acid chelate for just iron, and there's even some stronger chelates that you could do too that are synthetically produced organic molecules. Okay, so I guess that's enough for that. I have about 2 minutes left. Leaf analysis, the soil analysis or nutrient analysis tells you what's potentially available to the plant. Leaf tissue analysis tells you what the plant's actually taking up. So if you do different leaf analysis and send it to the lab, you can see which minerals are accumulating over time, which minerals are being decreased over time, and it gives you a roadmap. It helps you make some good decisions. Let's say the phosphorus is up at luxury levels. It's more than the plant needs. You're wasting money by adding more phosphorus. It already has more than it needs. You add more phosphorus, you're not going to get more plant growth out of it. So why do it? It's a potential problem. So that's easy. You see high levels of phosphorus, just cut back on your phosphorus. If the plant needs, it's low in potassium, give it a spoon feed a little potassium. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. We can use this to diagnose problems more specifically and to treat them. Now, once you see the visual signs of deficiency, the plants already have to catch up, and they're already being stalled. So they're not going to reach their potential. So with the leaf analysis, you can see which elements are being drawn down before there's a deficiency and say, oh, look, this is getting close to deficient. Let me give it a little more of that element, spoon feed. And So the plant will never have the deficiency. The momentum keeps going, increase the nutritional value of food, and increase the yield. Okay, I'm almost out of time. I promised I'd get to this real quick. Why my leaves turning yellow? I wrote an article on it years ago. First of all, nitrogen deficiency. If there's just a general yellowing of the leaves, starting a general chlorosis, starting at the bottom leaves, older leaves working their way up, probably a nitrogen deficiency. Pretty easy to diagnose. If you get the intervenal chlorosis starting at the bottom, the veins stay green, tissue between them starting to turn yellow, probably magnesium deficiency. Let's give it a little magnesium sulfate, bring it back. Let's see, next one, iron deficiency. You get the intervenal chlorosis too, but at the top of the plant, the new growth. Why? Iron is an immobile element. In other words, the plant can't take iron out of the old leaves and send it to the new leaves. So if there's a deficiency, it's going to show up in the new growth. Usually it's a symptom, though, of your pH is out of balance. And you see some intervenal chlorosis there at the top of the plant. And of course, the chelated trace elements, already said humic acid, add a little kelp with that, and you're going to give it all the trace elements that they need and more. 62 trace elements, foliar feed it. Here are some typical signs. This is magnesium deficiency. If you look closely, you'll see the veins are green, tissue starting to turn yellow, older leaves. Potassium deficiency, the edges of the leaves look like they're burned. They're brown, curled up a little bit. Typical signs of potassium deficiency. But even before you see those symptoms, the plant may be getting a hidden hunger. So that leaf tissue analysis is going to tell you whether they need the potassium or not. Zinc deficiency, it's intervenal chlorosis too. This picture, this is pretty severe, but sometimes it's really hard to tell because sometimes the intervenal chlorosis could be manganese, it could be iron, it could be magnesium. So the only way to know for sure which element it is the leaf analysis. Calcium breaks down the cell walls, the cells collapse. Iron deficiency, intervenal chlorosis, again, it's an immobile element at the top of the plant. It starts from the petiole, works its way out. That's how you can tell it's an iron deficiency. Get the pH under control, it'll fix itself. Use a foliar spray, the plant will respond quickly because you need available ionic, water-soluble nutrients for the plant to utilize and grow. And with that, 8 o'clock exactly, I'm done. Yay.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Harley. Wow. I am amazed. I got notes. I got lots of notes. I'm gonna have to put them together later. I do have one question.
Sure.
But before I get to that question, anyone who does have questions, just please raise your hand and I will come and address you so that you can ask your question. So my question is, I have a chamomile plant and her stem has gone yellow. And now her leaves are going yellow, so I'm unable to harvest any of the flowers, even though they're still blooming. I guess I could harvest, but there's something not right. And she just started blooming, but her stem is yellow.
Is it
So
the leaves, are they just a general yellowing like we saw with the nitrogen, or is it like intervenal blotches?
general yellow. And she's got
Okay,
good drainage. She's in a pot. She's the
that's
same
good.
pot as last year. Beautiful drainage. Um, yeah, she's just really not happy.
Okay, well, okay, let's okay, first of all, I don't know for sure because you need a leaf analysis. So I'm just guessing that it's nitrogen deficiency, but it concerns me that the stems are yellow too. You usually
Okay.
don't see that kind of yellowing right away. Once in a while, you can have symptoms of nutrient deficiencies if the roots aren't actively growing. I mean, if you start to get a little bit of root rot, like Pythium or Rhizoctonia, if the root hairs, which you can't see, but if the root hairs are dying back, then the plants can't take up the nutrients properly. They won't be able to take up calcium because calcium is only taken up at the very tips of the growing roots, the very tips, the unsuberized roots. Iron is only taken up from the root tips. So if there's any root problem or disease, you can start to see symptoms of any or all of the nutrient deficiencies. So I'm not saying that's what it is, but it could be that too. That's potential. And sometimes if I can't narrow it down to, oh, we got full, really fertile soil, there's plenty of nitrogen. My soil analysis shows that we have all the nitrogen we need. It could be that. Let me see. One of the biggest, for beginners, the biggest mistake is, I'm not saying you're doing this, but the biggest mistake is over fertilizing. And
Yeah,
then
I've done that.
if it gets too salty, if the salts start to build up in the root zone and in the pot, the plant's taking up the water but leaving the minerals behind, and you taking it up, leaving the minerals, it can get saltier and saltier and saltier, and then literally the salts can pull some of the water out of the plant. And usually when that happens, they start to wilt. So the other mistake that a lot of soil growers make is overwatering. What you want to do is give a really good full watering so that water is coming out, good drainage water is coming out of the bottom of the pot, leaching away any of the excess minerals that might be building up, and then let it dry back until it's almost completely dried out before you give it another thorough watering. A lot of gardeners will add a little water at a time. Oh, it looks like it needs some water. Give it a little. And then what happens is it starts to develop some anaerobic zones, some pockets of water in this potting soil, in the pot. And then that becomes anaerobic. It uses up the oxygen, and that sets up the environment for the anaerobic fungi. Those are the bad guys, the Pythium, the Rhizoctonia. So it's better to do thorough waterings and let it dry back well before you do the next. That's just kind of a general thing. But I really can't answer your question without,
I think
more
you might have
input.
answered it, though.
When
I
in
think you might
doubt.
have.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Thank you.
and I've seen that with gardeners. I mean, I'm not calling anybody, I'm not calling anybody out, but they go, oh, they're overwatering. Oh, the roots the plant's wilting. Maybe I need to give it some more water. No, you see, it's the opposite. You need to let it dry out so there's more oxygen. The plants need the water with dissolved oxygen in the water that the plant needs for the metabolism of the root cells.
Well, and that makes sense too with the humidity levels that we've had here. So with the humidity and overwatering and over fertilizing, so I'm like, what's wrong with my baby? So because the plants, I talk to my plants. I love my plants. They're my buddies. They're my, yeah. But I definitely probably overdid some areas. So I thank you for that clarification and redirecting me to a way where I can really support her. And I also want to make mention that Chief Mel and I were speaking earlier today, and we were talking about splitting tomatoes. So I'm going to pass it over to Chief.
That was part of I was discussing because we had no rain, and I've been trying to water and make sure everything was watered every day. And then all of a sudden, a couple of days, we just got hellacious rain. And the next thing I know is I go out there and I'm got splits on my tomatoes, and I'm starting to toss them, and they're still good. I just realized that I tossed about 10 or 12 of them. So, boron. All right. We all get our lessons. All right, folks. I know some of you may have some. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, and also it's a good thing too because it's hard to we don't have control over nature. It's really easy in a computer-controlled greenhouse to say, "Oh, I give it exactly the right amount of boron right at the right time," and wow, I'm getting 100. They're getting in those greenhouses where they
Mm-hmm.
literally inject individual minerals into the water that's going to the plant. They're getting as much as 100 kilograms, over 200 pounds of tomatoes per square meter in the
Whoa.
greenhouse. So it's
Whoa.
easy to say that when you have control of your humidity and control of your environment, your CO2 and everything else, yeah. But we don't have that control outdoors. So we have to kind of work with it the best we can. And sometimes the uneven watering, you get that heat and wants to make the fruit, um, the skins a little more solid, I guess you'd say. And then you
Mm-hmm.
get more watering, and then they're trying to expand and they can't, so they split. So in uneven watering can also cause it. And it can go the other way too. You could be having, um, be irrigating, and then all of a sudden you have nice hot weather, and then all of a sudden you get a big rainstorm.
Yeah.
And after the rainstorm, the plant's taking up more water, and then they split. So there
That's what I was saying.
is
And
a
I was walking through my garden, and I'm Michelle. This one. Wait a minute. It's on this. It's over here, and I'm going to. And so my green tomatoes. Thank God the rain hadn't got to them, but it was the red ones that was starting to ripen up, and that's when I'm like. And then you answered that, but I figured that with the rain that made a lot of sense. I know some people's got some hands up, and then we're going to go to letting people ask some questions. So if you got there you go. Thank you. If you got questions, please put your hand up. And Michelle, you're in charge, and you can call on daughter.
Sounds good. Before I call on Sissy daughter Z, we do have a question in the chat from Debbie. And she is asking if the greenhouse that you spoke about earlier, is it possible for people to visit? She is from the Netherlands, living close to Belgium.
Oh, probably not. I was kind of blessed to be able to do those tours, but they're very cautious about visitors to the greenhouse because they can track in um, diseases on their feet. You saw the picture. They had the cover the suits on. They had the booties on, but even then, they're probably not going to just let someone come up, knock on the door. Can I come in and see what you're doing? More than likely not. But I was brought in because the people that were doing the trial were set up the meeting in Belgium. They set that up because it was their biostimulant product that they were doing trials on, scientific
Oh,
trials. So they opened the door for us to come in and see it. And I got to see the data too. And it gave me some real good clues for later on for how to make some new products here in the United States to help our growers get better
that,
quality and yield. The Dutch are
that
way
is
ahead of us, by the way. If your friends from the Netherlands, when I'm over there visiting greenhouses, I feel like I'm the dumbest in the smart class. That's how I feel. I'll learn, but I might be the dumbest in the smart class, but I'll learn as much as I can and then come back and do all the research and try to get my questions answered so we can pass it
oh,
on to you guys tonight. Pass
and
it
we
on to
are
all of
so
you.
appreciative. So appreciative. I am so thankful that you are here and sharing with us. And I look forward to seeing you in fall because I'm going to put you on the schedule.
Yeah.
Right, Chief?
Yeah, I'll just say
Uh,
it's one of the best. Before you ask the next question, it's one of the best hobbies in the world for the winter. You're done with your garden, right? Outdoors. But I come in. I'm in Michigan. I come in, knock the snow off my boots, go down into my basement, in my garden, I have full spectrum light. I have fruit on the vine. I have aromatic herbs. I have better quality herbs in the middle of the winter than most restaurants have in the middle of the summer. And they're there all the time in a very small space. And you don't have to have a big garden. Small garden. Little oscillating fan, one light, just enjoy it. I've spent 10 minutes in my garden after work. Not anymore because I'm retired, but the stress of the day is gone. I could sit in front of a TV set for 2 hours and not feel as much stress free as 10 minutes just tinkering around in there watching the plants grow. That's
Oh,
all.
I am so
It's
excited.
fun.
This girl,
It's
this
that
girl up in
electrical.
Canada, yeah, yeah, she's busy all winter now.
But I like what he wove in about the electrical because that's all we have been talking about for weeks. Uh, Harley, about electrical. I actually spoke at a couple of conferences, 2 months ago. Michelle keeps up my schedule more than I do. She's right. She handles the scheduling. And it was about energy. And when I was talking about energy and how people that have NDEs have because it rewires us and gives us a heightened sense. Well, by the same token, the plant, and when you was going down the charts and I'm looking at the elements and I'm looking at the metals and I'm like, yep, there is where that electrical ground flow comes in. And it all makes sense because everything here on Mother Earth is all woven together. We're all interconnected. And when we understand it and we able to help our plants be healthier, thinking about your basement. Go, bro. All right.
Sissy Daughter Z.
Hello. Thank you. It was awesome. It's a lot. So much. I have to go back and do the recordings again. But yeah, you pretty much answered. That's why I put my hand down. But I'm in Southwest Florida right near the beach. It's real sandy. And I do a lot of spoon feeding. But even with that being the case, that like if I leave anything out in the sun for a day, it's like a magnifying glass on the leaf. It's just crisp. But a lot of the plants that even are tropical right now, they're changing like pinks because of the sun. Do you have any like any studies on tropical areas like this? Because a lot of things apply, but for a lot of guests that we have, but when it comes to like my climate over here, it's a tricky one. So I was just curious if you have any good directions or
Well, let's see. I lived in Miami for 18 years in my youth, from when I was 19 years old until Hurricane Andrew blew my house down, and I moved to Michigan. So I know about the tropic, and I love it. I mean, I really did enjoy it there. I did. That was before I was doing hydroponics, though, and before I was growing a lot of plants. Now, one of my teachers, name is, he wrote the book. Here, let me grab the book. This one here. My hydroponics teacher, Hydroponic Crop Production by Dr. Howard Resch. This was my very first text that I was using to learn, some things about the elements and about the systems and so forth. Well, he moved to, where did he go? To Antigua. Later he moved to Antigua, and they were setting up greenhouses there to grow food year-round. And he changed his nutrient recipes for the tropical climate. He actually made adjustments in them.
Okay.
So he I think even in my book here, he was starting to do that. I saw some of this.
Maybe I'll look him up. Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Howard Resch, R-E-S-H. He may have at least some clues for you. But that sandy stuff, but the sand, it just leaches your minerals like crazy.
Right.
know,
I've been here for about
I mean,
11 years and I came from New Jersey, which honestly was the best soil. You know,
oh, yeah,
people make fun
yeah.
of it, but I mean, our fruits and vegetables, the flavor was so much better. Even when you go up to New York or Philadelphia, it didn't matter what area up there. If you were there in New Jersey, it's so good. And it grew everywhere. Like anything could grow anywhere. So
Yeah. And that
big
potassium,
difference.
that potassium for the flavor, of the transport of the sugars, for health of the plant in sand, that's gone. I mean, you might
Hmm.
have in your soil in New Jersey, if you have a combination of
Hmm.
clay and sand and loam, it's going to hold on to that longer,
Hmm.
and
Whatever.
it's going to stay available to the plant longer. And also, it's going to be a healthier environment for your microbes that are making the
Yeah.
nutrients available. So yeah, so in sand, it's almost like hydroponics.
Right.
You're going to have to add a little bit,
Hmm.
all the time, instead of
Hmm.
just here and there.
Okay. I try to create like holes, deep holes and put the soil, little spots into the
Yeah,
ground. Yeah. Same
yeah.
thing, I
And
guess. Right.
add your organic matter and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
Help hold the nutrients. Okay,
Yeah. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Harley? I'm so excited. Like, yeah. Oh, nobody called me tomorrow because I'm busy. Just saying. I already want to ask you, is there anything I should prepare for to start my hydroponics? Like, is plastic okay? Or is glass better? So I can get my containers ready and like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah, yeah.
excited.
There's different styles they'll talk about depending on what you want to do. But the easiest one, the one I started with, my very first one, I did what they call an ebb and flow system. So there was a top tray, and I had my plants in 6-inch pots. I had them in expanded clay pellets too, so lots of oxygen availability. The water and nutrients were in a reservoir underneath. Plants on the top one, the water and nutrients under. A t- with a submersible pump. A timer clicked the pump on, it would flood the plants in the top tray with water, and then the pump would click off and it would drain back down, pulling oxygen to the roots. And I'd set up the timer to automatically feed and water my plants 3 or 4 times a day during the daytime. So it was ebb and flow. So I had one tray that I had for my herbs, all vegetative growth. So I had a formula that was a grow formula. Then I had another tray next to another ebb and flow system with my tomatoes, with a little bit stronger light, a 600-watt light, because it's a tropical fruit. And I had my bloom nutrient in there. So I had two systems. So I had 400 and 600, a total of 1,000 watts, which isn't really that much, you know. And I ran them for about 12 hours a day. So I could afford it back then. But I had I mean, I was picking fruit off the vine. Maybe Christmas morning, I probably harvested 200 cherry tomatoes, ripe ones, right? And then you could eat them like an apple too. They weren't really watered, they had all that flavor. And I gave them to my dad in a basket as part of his Christmas present. And when he bit into that salad at Christmas dinner, I was just kind of saying, I was waiting because I thought, I told him, yeah, I grew these in hydroponics, but I didn't tell him what to expect. He bit into that first tomato and he goes, wow, I haven't tasted a tomato like this since last summer in my garden. I said, well, Dad, I get them all the time. I'll make my sandwich in the kitchen, then I go down to my basement to eat it because I'll look for, oh, there's a ripe tomato, pop it in my mouth, take a bite. See, here's another one. Oh, that one was nice and sweet. Take another one. That one is a little bit more tomatoey, a little more, it's just a pleasure. It's just fun to be able to grow, to eat that nutrient dense food that's so good. My wife and I did lettuce too. That was gourmet quality. The bricks was off the chart for premium quality. we did it for a little while when she was doing chemo for breast cancer. We set up a little hydroponics outdoors. Every store, every restaurant that saw or tasted that lettuce, romaine lettuce, bought it at 20% above premium price. Not one single no. Because it had all the flavors. It had the sweet, it had the little bitter, it had the peppery flavor that it's supposed to have, not just tasting like iceberg lettuce. So, yeah, you can, if you do it right, if you pay attention. We'll get into the class later on and just do a few simple things for maintenance. You can have very high quality in a very small space. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of like getting way ahead of myself here.
I am so excited. Yeah, that's probably my fault though, because I'm super excited to have a garden and fresh food all year round. So, and you can share that with people. You can, oh my gosh, there's so much you can do. Chief,
This has been a good night. I enjoyed you last time. Tonight you were fabulous. We're getting ready to go into an open discussion, and we'll be turning the video off in just a moment. But Creator puts all around us those road signs. The conversations that Michelle and I had today, the stuff that Chris has been sharing back and forth, and Chris and everyone, send stuff to, if you want me to know stuff, send it to the Rainbow Warrior, to the Chief Mel email. That's Michelle. She keeps me organized. I got so much going on, nobody would begin to believe. But thank you, everyone. We're getting ready to, I want to get into that for the fall, Harley. We're getting ready to go into a few segments dealing with plant medicine and everything from the Native American plant medicine to the plants of the Bible. Back in the day, they knew and what they knew and what they took care of. So this is some really cool stuff we're going to be getting into. We're going to have some grandmothers joining us. And so I really appreciate you being here again, brother. We're going to have about an hour and a half of video, so it may be sometime tomorrow before this thing gets up. But you did a magnificent program. Again, thank you. I look forward to us getting into the hydroponics and the fall garden, because I'm going to try to do a little greenhouse gardening this year. So ideas I'm looking for. So anyhow, and as natural as we can keep it. And those tomatoes, I was tasting when you was saying that, thinking about them cherries. So magnificent, brother, magnificent. Michelle, you got some closing comments, and then we can turn off the recorder and have an open discussion.
I might want to unmute myself. Thank you again, Harley. We are so appreciative for you sharing all of this information. As I've said a couple of times, I am super excited for what's coming up. Also, speaking of what's coming up, we will be here on the 29th. Just to let you know, originally we were not going to be. Right now it is an open discussion. However, that may change because there are things that we would like to address, such as definitions and stewardship. So there's a few things that are showing up to speak about. Also in August, on the 12th and I believe the 26th, let me double check those dates though, but the two Wednesdays we are here in August is grandmother Barbara Vitale, who will be sharing with us about plant medicine and sacred ceremony and the beautiful teachings around that. So we are certainly looking forward to that as well. And with that, I would like to say I love you all. And I thank you so very much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you on the 29th. And with that, take care.
Oh, we rise, we unite, from the mountains to the sea. Warriors of love, you and me. We are the new tribe of the earth, connecting our spirits, remembering our worth. First Nation standing hand in hand, healing the wounds, restoring the land. With every heartbeat, we sing our song,